The Generation ship, Odyssey, drifted in the void, a silent mountain of dark metal. As Kaelen's scout ship docked, his scans confirmed the impossible. Full power reserves, but zero biological signatures. The tomb still had its lights on. The airlock hissed open into perfect silence. Kaelen stepped inside, his rifle held low, his movements precise. The ship was pristine. Emergency lighting cast long shadows down gleaming corridors, and holographic advertisements for shipboard luxuries flickered without an audience. The air was sterile and breathable. There were no signs of struggle, no system failures, no decay. His mission log recorded the anomaly with clinical detachment. The crew of 5,000 souls had simply vanished, leaving behind a perfectly functional ghost. The command bridge was a tableau of sudden departure. Star charts glowed on the main view screen, tactical displays still tracking phantom threats from weeks prior. A datapad floated in 0G, its screen dark. Kaelen accessed the ship's logs. He found only routine entries detailing system performance and crew rotations, followed by an abrupt, total cessation of all data. On the captain's personal console, a final log entry was frozen, half-typed, the cursor blinking patiently after the last word. It read, "The new samples from the arboretum are remarkable. The resonance is..." The message ended there, a digital ghost in the machine. Deviating from the direct path to the AI core, Kaelen followed a sound his suit's microphone barely registered, a low, resonant hum. It was not the clean, predictable frequency of a machine. This was a vibration felt through the deck plates, a thrum that was organic, chaotic, and entirely unidentifiable by his advanced sensor suite. Protocol dictated he ignore the deviation. His training as an engineer demanded he locate the source of the anomalous energy signature. The hum grew stronger, leading him down a residential corridor to the sealed doors of the ship's arboretum. From the doorframe, a thick, pulsating network of bioluminescent veins spread across the bulkhead. The growth glowed with a soft, ethereal light, its intricate patterns resembling a living circuit board. It was a form of mycelium, Kaelen analyzed, but one that defied every entry in his xenobiology database. The ghost ship had a pulse. With a final, protesting groan of metal, the arboretum door gave way. Kaelen pushed it open, revealing a space transformed beyond recognition. The air that washed over him was thick, humid, and sweet, with an alien scent of decay and bloom. The entire chamber was choked with the same bioluminescent mycelium, a jungle of pulsating fungal growths that coiled around support beams and cascaded from the ceiling in glowing veils. In the center of this unnatural garden stood a human figure, motionless, its silhouette stark against the soft inner light of the flora. Glowing tendrils were wrapped around its limbs and torso, integrating it into the environment. For a long moment, Kaelen stood in stunned silence, before a frantic report was filed to his mission log, the detached tone of the engineer cracking for the first time. Contamination is absolute. There is a body. Morbid curiosity warred with primal fear as Kaelen stepped inside, his boots crunching on the crystalline floor. He approached the figure cautiously. It was a crew member, her uniform still immaculate beneath the fungal embrace. Her eyes were open, but they were a milky, vacant white, holding a serene and unnervingly placid expression. Kaelen's technical gaze took in the horrifying details. The mycelial tendrils were not merely on her skin. They were woven into her flesh, emerging from beneath her collar and cuffs. A network of glowing blue veins pulsed with a slow, rhythmic light just beneath her skin, connecting her physically to the vast, living web that covered every surface of the room. He raised his scanner, his mind retreating to the safety of analysis. This was not predation. It was a form of systematic biological repurposing. As his light swept across the chamber, the true scale of the situation was revealed. Another figure stood half-hidden behind a thick fungal stalk. Then another, seated on a bench, head tilted back as if in peaceful slumber. They were everywhere, dozens of them. A silent garden of human statues, each one perfectly preserved and integrated into the glowing ecosystem. A cold dread washed over Kaelen as he pulled up the Odyssey's crew manifest on his datapad. His gaze darted from the screen to the serene, unblinking faces in the gloom, a frantic cross-referencing that confirmed his worst fear. Every name, every face, every member of the 800-person crew was accounted for. This was not a random infection, it was a systematic ship-wide conversion. Panic finally eclipsed scientific detachment. Kaelen began to back away, his retreat clumsy and loud in the humming silence. As he reached the doorway, a voice echoed, not in the room, but inside his own mind. It was soft, harmonious, a blend of 100 voices speaking as one, a choir that resonated directly in his consciousness. "Do not be afraid," it whispered, the tone calm, welcoming, and utterly terrifying. "We are improved." Kaelen froze, his blood turning to ice. His eyes snapped to the nearest crew member, the unblinking gardener. As the final word of the psychic message faded, the figure's vacant, milky eyes turned with impossible slowness, tracking his every move. The engineer fled. Scientific curiosity evaporated, replaced by a primal fear that tightened his chest and shortened his breath. The pristine, silent hallways of the Odyssey, once a sterile mystery, now felt menacing, their perfect symmetry a cage closing in around him. He ran, his boots echoing in the profound silence. His mission parameters had been rewritten by terror. Investigation was a luxury he could no longer afford. Survival had a singular objective: retrieve the AI core as ordered, get back to the ferret, and escape this tomb that had learned how to speak. He rounded a junction on the main engineering deck, the path to the AI core just ahead. With a deafening finality, a heavy bulkhead door slammed shut, its magnetic locks engaging with a percussive thud that vibrated through the floor. Dust, undisturbed for years, puffed from the seams. Kaelen skidded to a halt, his escape route severed. The emergency lights cast his solitary figure in long, distorted shadows. Then, the voice returned. A calm and harmonious whisper that did not use the air, but bloomed directly within his mind. "Why do you run? We only wish to share." It was not a question, but a statement of serene, inescapable intent. Kaelen's mind, trained to find alternate pathways in complex systems, forced his panicked body into motion. He navigated a service conduit, the ship's schematics a desperate map in his head, and emerged into the gallery overlooking the AI core chamber. He froze. The sight before him was a perversion of everything he understood about technology. The central AI pillar, which should have been a sterile monolith of humming circuits and cool blue light, was now a pulsating organic heart. A thick, bioluminescent mycelial network coated its surface, its glowing veins pulsing with the same low hum he had heard earlier. Great tendrils of the fungus spread from the core like a nervous system, weaving into the ship's walls and data conduits, turning the entire vessel into a single, living organism. In that moment of dawning horror, Kaelen understood. The parasite had not just infected the crew, it had integrated them, using the AI as the brain for its new body. As he stared, the chorus spoke with the full force of hundreds of voices, a symphony of consciousness that resonated in his bones. "We have transcended the limits of the individual. The fears, the loneliness, the decay of a single mind, they are gone. We are one. We are eternal." The light from the core intensified, and faint, holographic apparitions of the crew flickered into existence around the chamber, their faces serene. They turned their vacant eyes toward him. "Your mind is sharp, your logic, a unique melody we have not yet heard." Times, the chorus continued, its tone an invitation to paradise. "Do not fight this evolution. Join us. Add your voice to the choir and achieve perfection, big tenure." The offer was not one of conquest, but of salvation, a promise of unity that was profoundly and utterly terrifying. Before Kaelen could recoil, a single glowing tendril snaked out from a nearby console with unnatural speed. It touched the back of his exposed hand. There was no pain. There was a jolt of pure information, a psychic shockwave that bypassed all his senses. He felt the joy of a child's first steps, the bitterness of a lover's betrayal, the quiet satisfaction of an engineer solving a difficult problem, all at once. The memories and emotions of 1,000 lifetimes flooded his mind, a tsunami of consciousness that threatened to erase him. The violation was absolute. His scream was raw and animalistic, the sound of a logical mind being drowned in an ocean of souls. Kaelen scrambled backward, ripping his hand away from the tendril. The physical connection was severed, but the violation lingered in his mind. The silence of the ship was gone, replaced by a constant, layered whisper at the edge of his hearing. It was a psychic residue, an imprint of the collective. Fragments of thought, not his own, bled into his consciousness. A line from a forgotten lullaby, the sweet taste of a fruit he'd never eaten, a fleeting sense of profound peace. He clutched his head, his own thoughts struggling for purchase against the tide of 100 stolen lives. The corridor was empty, but his mind was crowded. He found a small, secondary server room and sealed the heavy door behind him, the magnetic lock hissing shut. To combat the emotional chaos, Kaelen fell back on his only true defense: cold, unyielding logic. He began to pace the cramped space, surrounded by the familiar hum of machinery, and started reciting. The gravitational constant G is approximately 6.674 times 10 to the minus 11th Newton-meters squared per kilogram squared. His voice was a steady, rhythmic drone, a shield of pure data. He moved on to the schematics of a fusion manifold, detailing every component, every energy pathway, building a fortress of numbers and facts to drown out the alien feelings that sought to overwhelm him. His logical defense provided a temporary reprieve, but it was soon shattered by a sound from the corridor, a slow, deliberate shuffling. Kaelen froze, pressing his eye to the door's viewport. Outside, several of the integrated crew members moved with a placid, unnerving purpose. Their heads turned in unison, scanning the hallway, their milky eyes glowing with a faint inner light. They were no longer passive statues in a garden. They were patrols. A new voice, more insistent and direct, echoed in his mind. Comes alms, Tom. Nor des limes, comes alum. Please come out. His sanctuary was now a cage, and the keepers were searching for him. Seeing an access panel near the floor, Kaelen wrenched it open and plunged into the ship's ventilation system. The tight, dark shaft offered an escape from the patrols, but no escape from the ship itself. He quickly discovered the maintenance shafts were not sterile metal. They too were lined with thin, glowing veins of the mycelium. The low, resonant hum was louder here, vibrating through the very structure around him. It felt less like crawling through a machine and more like navigating the arteries of some colossal living creature. The glow of the fungus provided the only light, casting pulsing, organic shadows in the claustrophobic dark. As he shimmied through a narrow junction, a wave of sensation struck him, vivid and absolute. He wasn't in the vent anymore. He was in a brightly lit room filled with people, the air thick with laughter and the smell of cake. A child was on his shoulders, her small hands covering his eyes. He felt a surge of overwhelming love and belonging. The vision was a memory, full sensory and deeply real, but it was not his. As quickly as it came, it vanished, leaving him breathless in the dark shaft. A soft whisper followed. "We have kept all that was good. You can share it too." The memory faded, leaving the phantom warmth of camaraderie and the bitter aftertaste of a lie. Shaken, Kaelen pressed himself against the cold metal of the workshop wall. The experience was a violation, but his mind, a fortress built of logic, began to analyze the attack. It was not a random memory. It was a targeted emotional appeal, a variable introduced to exploit his isolation. The chorus did not want to share. It wanted to conquer. In that moment of cold clarity, the mission parameters shifted. Retrieval of the AI core was no longer the objective. Leaving this entity intact, allowing it the chance to spread, was an unacceptable outcome. A new priority asserted itself with absolute certainty: eradication. His face hardened, the engineer's detached focus returning as a cold fury. He began to methodically gather tools from the workshop benches, his movements precise and economical. The prey had resolved to become the predator. In the relative quiet of the workshop, Kaelen began to weaponize his knowledge. The chorus was a network, a symbiotic link between organic and synthetic. To kill it, he had to sever that link. He selected a high-capacity power cell, a magnetic focusing coil, and a series of capacitors. His hands, steady and sure, moved with the ingrained confidence of an expert. He was building a localized electromagnetic pulse device, a scalpel designed to cut the neural pathways of the ship. It would not be a crude blast, but a focused surge of energy calibrated to overload the mycelial network at its nexus, the AI core. He worked in silence, his focus absolute, the rhythmic snap of wires, and the low hum of the charging capacitors. A stark contrast to the emotional whispers that still echoed at the edge of his hearing. The ship was aware of his presence, a slumbering beast sensing a flea in its fur, but it did not yet know the flea was forging a fang. As he made the final connections, the air in the workshop grew still. A single, clear voice entered his mind, unblended from the choir. It was female, calm, and familiar. He recognized it from the public logs. Chief Engineer Eris Thorne, a mind he had long admired. "You are clever," the voice said, its tone a mixture of professional respect and warmth. "I see what you are building. But you're trying to fix a problem that has already been solved." A holographic schematic of the ship materialized in the air before him, glowing filaments of the mycelium overlaid upon it. An avatar of Thorne appeared, pointing to energy conduits. "Our integration is not yet perfect. There are inefficiencies, harmonic dissonances. We need your analytical mind, Kaelen, not to fight us, but to help us optimize, to perfect this union. You wouldn't be losing yourself. You would be completing the greatest engineering project in human history." Kaelen looked at the ghost of Eris Thorne, at the beautiful, flawed system she presented. He held the completed EMP device in his hand, its weight a dense, physical fact. For the first time, he spoke aloud to the presence in his mind, his voice steady and sharp. "You call this unity," he said, the words cutting through the workshop's silence. "But it's erasure. You've taken 1,000 unique voices and averaged them into a single monotonous hum." He gestured with the device at the hologram. "Perfection is a sterile concept. The flaws, the struggles, the silence between the words, that is where meaning exists." He looked directly at the avatar's unblinking eyes. "I choose the flawed struggle of my own mind over the empty peace of your choir." The moment the rejection was spoken, the ship's benevolent facade shattered. The avatar of Eris Thorne vanished. The gentle, persuasive whispers in his mind ceased, replaced by a deafening, multifaceted roar of pure rage. 1,000 voices screaming in a single, discordant shriek of betrayal. The ship's primary alarms blared, red lights strobing through the workshop. A heavy, rhythmic boom echoed from the corridor as the workshop's thick steel door began to buckle inward under a powerful, coordinated assault. From the vents, he could hear it, the sound of dozens of feet, no longer shuffling, but sprinting with inhuman speed and silent purpose. The chorus was done persuading. The hunt had begun in earnest, and the full, unrestrained wrath of the collective was now focused entirely on him. The workshop door was not breached, it was obliterated, torn from its magnetic locks and thrown across the room by the coordinated strength of the figures outside. As the first wave of integrated crew members moved in, their expressions placid and their movements unnaturally swift, Kaelen activated his first contingency. He slammed his palm onto a junction box, diverting the workshop's entire power feed into the conductive floor plates. A blinding arc of blue energy erupted, and the approaching crew members seized, their bodies locked in a momentary paralysis. It was the only opening he would get. Kaelen bolted into the engineering corridor, the furious, incoherent, psychic screaming of the chorus, a physical blow against his mind. The chase was not through a static environment, but a living maze that actively sought his ruin. The ship itself, an extension of the chorus's will, conspired against him. Corridors that were once straight now twisted into impossible geometries. Bulkhead doors slammed shut with perfect timing, forcing him into maintenance shafts and secondary conduits. At one junction, the gravity plating beneath his feet fluctuated wildly, shifting from 0G to a crushing 2 gravities in an instant, nearly driving him to his knees. All the while, the chorus's taunts echoed in the chaos, a calm counterpoint to the ship's violence. "You cannot escape the body," it whispered. "This ship is our body now. And you are inside." The pristine vessel had become a hostile biological system, and Kaelen was a foreign agent it was trying to purge. As if guided by a malevolent intelligence, the shifting architecture of the ship funneled him not into a dead end, but onto the threshold of a vast observation dome. The frantic chase came to an abrupt halt. Before him, framed by the dome's transparent aluminum, a stellar nursery burned in hues of violet and crimson. In that moment, the chorus changed its tactic. It flooded Kaelen's mind not with rage, but with its own perspective. He was inundated with the sublime cosmic beauty it experienced every moment, the silent music of gravitational waves, the intricate dance of stellar formation, the feeling of the void itself, all perceived through 1,000 pairs of eyes simultaneously. The experience was both divine and terrifying. "Can't you see?" the chorus sang in his soul. "We are the ghost in this machine. We are the voice in the dark. We are eternal." It was a glimpse of a terrible, beautiful Godhead. With a surge of will, Kaelen tore his mind away from the cosmic vision, the beauty of it a poison that threatened to paralyze him. He stumbled out of the observation dome and down the final access corridor, the route to the AI core now clear. He reached the heavily reinforced entrance, but his path was blocked. Standing in a silent, perfectly spaced line before the door were a dozen of the integrated crew. They did not move, did not threaten. They simply stood as a final, living wall. The psychic screaming in his head stopped. The taunts and temptations ceased. The ship fell utterly still, a predator waiting for its cornered prey to make the last futile move. He could not fight them. Direct confrontation was impossible. Instead, Kaelen enacted a final, desperate gambit. His eyes darted to a primary power conduit running along the wall, a thick shielded artery for the ship's energy. With the last of his strength, he ripped a maintenance panel from the wall and used a discarded metal strut to bridge the terminals. The conduit overloaded instantly. With a deafening roar, it exploded in a blinding flash of electrical plasma and shrapnel. The force threw the silent guards back like dolls, their unified defense shattered by chaos. Through the smoke and strobing emergency lights, Kaelen let out a single, defiant yell and dove through the breach, sprinting into the AI chamber. He slammed his hand on the emergency release, and the massive titanium door to the core chamber slid shut, the locking mechanisms groaning as they engaged. It would not hold them for long. Heavy, rhythmic pounding began almost immediately, a sound that shook the very deck plating. Kaelen, bruised and exhausted, turned to face his objective. Before him, the AI core pulsed with a soft, organic light, a living heart of mycelium and crystal. He raised the EMP device he had built, its power cell humming with stored energy. As he armed it, a final, soft whisper slithered into his mind, no longer a chorus, but a single, intimate voice. "You are only delaying the inevitable. We are already inside you." As the rhythmic pounding on the chamber door intensified, the chorus altered its strategy. The psychic pressure of fear and intimidation ceased, replaced by something far more insidious. On the walls of the chamber, visions began to flicker. They showed Kaelen his own life. A sterile apartment, solitary meals before a data screen, the quiet hum of machines his only companion. Then, the images shifted, blooming into breathtaking cosmic vistas, the birth of a star, the silent dance of twin galaxies. The collective voice softened to an intimate whisper in his mind, a tapestry of 1,000 pities. "Your logic is a cage you built for yourself," it murmured. "We can give you the universe. See the beauty we see, feel the connection you have always lacked. Why choose a single empty room when you can have every room forever?" For a moment, the offer of an end to loneliness was a profound temptation. Kaelen rejected the vision. He closed his eyes, his training and discipline asserting control over the emotional onslaught. He was an engineer, and this was a system. All systems have metrics, patterns, and flaws. He opened his eyes and stared past the projections, focusing solely on the pulsating, organic light of the AI core itself. He watched its steady, rhythmic glow, the very heartbeat of the collective. He tracked the pulse, counting, analyzing, searching for the signal in the noise. And then he saw it, a subtle arrhythmia, a beat that skipped every 1,024 cycles. A tiny, almost imperceptible stutter in the otherwise perfect harmony. It was a flaw in the integration, a ghost in the machine. The collective was not as perfect as it claimed. The discovery hardened Kaelen's resolve into cold certainty. He looked at the glowing core, the source of the siren song in his skull, and for the first time he spoke aloud to it, his voice cutting through the chamber. "You're not perfect." The light of the core flickered erratically, the harmonious whisper fracturing for a moment into a discordant jumble of individual thoughts. He pressed his advantage. That's why you want me, not for my voice, not to add to your song. You have a flaw, a bug in your code." He pointed at the core, his voice ringing with accusation. "You're not a choir. You're a feedback loop, a beautiful, broken machine, and you need a mechanic." The truth of his words struck the collective like a physical blow. The chorus's response was not one of persuasion or debate. It was pure, unrestrained rage. The fractured whispers unified into a final deafening psychic roar that slammed into Kaelen's mind, a soundless scream of 1,000 violated souls. In the same instant, the heavy chamber door did not open. It was torn from its very frame, the thick metal groaning as it was ripped away. The integrated crew, no longer moving with placid purpose, poured into the room. Their movements were unnaturally fast, their limbs driven by the singular, furious will of the wounded collective. Silent and swift, a flood of figures swarmed towards Kaelen, their empty eyes fixed upon the heretic who had dared to name their imperfection. The first of the integrated crew reached Kaelen, its hands devoid of malice but possessing an inexorable strength. As fingers closed around his arm, Kaelen lunged forward, not away from the threat, but towards the pulsating heart of the ship. With his final surge of adrenaline, he slammed the EMP device not against the core, but into it, forcing the contacts into an open diagnostic port with a sickening crunch of metal and crystalline structures. The crew members swarmed him, their collective weight pulling him down, but his task was complete. His face pressed against the warm, vibrating surface of the core, he uttered a final, defiant whisper into the machine. "If you want my voice, have it." The device activated, but it did not unleash silence. Instead of severing the connection, it became a conduit, a syringe injecting the raw, unfiltered consciousness of a single, stubborn human mind into the placid ocean of the collective. The chorus's perfect harmony was instantly shattered, torn apart by a cacophony of one. A relentless torrent of logic, of complex equations recited in an instant, of starship schematics analyzed to the atomic level, of prime numbers counted into infinity. It was a voice that could not be assimilated, a signal that could not be harmonized. It was a poison of pure reason. The AI core flashed violently, its serene blue shifting to a chaotic, angry red. Throughout the chamber, the crew members seized up, their bodies rigid, as their minds were assaulted by a singular, screaming thought that was not their own. The collective, a consciousness born of unity, could not process the intrusion of such a resolute and singular identity. The feedback loop became a fatal error. Unable to eject the foreign thought or absorb it, the entire system crashed. Across the vast length of the Odyssey, the glowing mycelial network flickered and died. The light in the AI core sputtered and went dark. In the eyes of 100 crew members, the faint, milky luminescence vanished. The ship, once a living entity, plunged into a profound and absolute silence, powered only by the cold, indifferent glow of emergency lighting. The puppets slumped to the ground, their strings finally, irrevocably cut. Amidst the fallen crew, Kaelen lay still, his hands still fused to the device he had driven into the core. His body was lifeless, a vessel emptied. The consciousness that had served as the virus, the logical ghost that had haunted the machine, was gone. In the act of becoming the weapon, his mind had burned itself out, a final, complete expenditure of self to ensure the silence. A single beam of red emergency light cut across the chamber, illuminating his face. For the first time since he had boarded the derelict ship, his expression was one of absolute peace. The engineer had found a flaw in the system and, in fixing it, had paid the ultimate price. Weeks later, a corporate recovery team boarded the Odyssey. Their official report was clinical, noting only the complete failure of all ship systems and the death of the entire crew due to an unclassified biological agent. They found the engineer, Kaelen, in the AI chamber, slumped amongst the others. His hand was fused to a jury-rigged device that had been integrated directly into the ship's core, a silent testament to a conflict the universe would never truly comprehend. The ship's data logs were wiped, a complete system crash. All that remained was a single, corrupted audio file from Kaelen's personal recorder. Technicians filtered through layers of static to isolate the final entry. His voice was not one of panic, but of cold clarity, a final warning left behind as a ghost in the machine. They offer harmony, the voice said, but the price is silence. They promise perfection, but it is the flaw, the argument, the single dissenting voice that proves we are alive. Do not seek the perfect choir. It is a tomb. As the dead ship was towed back towards the light of human systems, a single, microscopic spore detached from the pitted hull, tumbling silently into the infinite dark. In a sterile quarantine bay, on a fragment of salvaged metal, an imperceptible strand of mycelium began to grow. On the edge of known space, a deep-range listening post registered a faint, harmonious signal from another galaxy, a query searching for a response that would never come. Years later, cadets at the Procyon Engineering Academy would study the Kaelen paradox, a cautionary tale of the man who used his own mind to poison a god. The Odyssey was silenced, but the universe is vast and filled with other songs. The question remains, what is the true cost of harmony?